Namaste. Welcome to Sipping on Stories podcast, where we welcome women healers and spiritual leaders from all around the world to come and share their journey and their experiences, and of course, over warm cups and deep thoughts. Please subscribe, like, and share this podcast so we can spread some love. Thank you. Awesome. Hi, Jessie. Welcome to Sipping on Stories. I'm very, very happy to have you here today. So, and tell us where you're joining from, first of all, and what's the weather like there?
Hello. Yeah, I'm stoked to be here as well. I'm in Kelowna, BC, Canada, and it's actually really nice out today. It's nice and sunny. We're just getting into summer solstice.
Awesome. That's great. The time we are recording this is freezing. So I'm freezing in Melbourne. So I think it recorded like 1 degree the other day and I was freezing. So I am. But anyway, with that, would you love to, hear from you what your journey has been this far? I know you have, you've been doing a lot of things with your career, with what you studied versus what you're doing is totally different things. And I was very fascinated when I kind of heard about your entire journey. But would you love to, let our listeners know what your journey has been like? We talked about the last time we connected, we talked about Kundalini awakening and what that was like for you and what kind of impact has it had on your life?
Yeah, for sure. It's like, oh, okay, where do I start with that? Well, yeah, so pre-awakening, I suppose, I studied music. I grew up in a small town. I've always been very creative, very into art, as well as into people and relationships. And for the most part, I thought I had landed myself after, frankly, a lot of ups and downs in romantic relationships. And I guess I could say, like, certain traumas that I've had. I ended up here in Kelowna, BC. And I thought I had my life sort of set out for me. I went through a pretty tough separation. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to work for this real estate firm. I'll do music and singing on the side. And then that's good enough for me. I can deal with that as a 5 to 10 year plan. But then, all of a sudden I found that life had other plans. And that's when I had the experience, you could say, of the Kundalini. So, I mean, I can only speak to my own. I know that there's a lot of other different things out there like Kundalini yoga. And I wonder, is that just people totally changing their life in one yoga session? I don't think so. I think it can be subtle and different awakenings can happen to people in a myriad of ways, depending on, their soul's choices and their situation. But for me, it was highly abrupt. So it was literally so the loose definition is that the Kundalini energy is of the feminine, that like a snake that rises from the base of the spine and moves through all of the chakra centers. And so I literally felt a snake-like movement in my lower back and abdomen area. And then the next night I guess it was sort of an intervening with the divine. And I peed a whole bunch of times. I got crazy downloads about what had happened in my past life and why I'm here, as well as I saw integers. And I can only describe it as like fear joy, like being the most afraid while simultaneously the most joyous at the same time. Yeah.
Okay. I'm pretty sure, sometimes it's very hard to put your experiences in words. And I think I understand. I would imagine, I mean, I cannot imagine what that was like. So, and words cannot do justice, I'm sure. If you don't mind telling our listeners when that exactly happened, were you doing any practices as per se, or it just happened one moment and you were like, oh my God, what's happening? Did you even know that was Kundalini rising? So how did you discover that?
That's a great question. Yeah, I didn't know that that's what it was at the time. I had only heard the word from, I think, a coworker a few years back who just mentioned it off the cuff. But yeah, this was in August of 2022, right after the Lionsgate portal. So at the beginning of August. And at the time, I had just went through a really major separation and just a lot of stress around that. And I had also just met my current partner in New Orleans when I was singing at a barbershop convention, and I hadn't sung in years because of COVID and moving out west. And so it was kind of like my voice came online. And then, yeah, a few weeks later, everything else transpired. And it wasn't until I was listening to a podcast because my cat started lying on my feet, which she would never do. She used to never even go on the bed. But then after like this energy started turning its way into my body and essentially making me realize the interconnectedness of all things, she was always lying on my feet. And I listened to this podcast about Kundalini awakenings, and the host was saying his dog started laying on his feet. And I was like, that's what's happening to me. So yeah, it was a little bit scary because I was alone and it was really hard to suss real information. But overall, like it's balanced out a lot. So yeah,
Wow.
now it's just all about the integration of such.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. And how has it impacted your life in a sense? Like, what changes did you see afterwards to your life? Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, life has never been the same. Right around that time, so within maybe 2 weeks, I discovered this course called Archetypes and the Polypoetic Psyche.
Mm.
And it said that it involved myth, drama, Greek mythology, psychology, astrology. It was like everything that I love except for Christmas caroling was in this course. So I was like, I have to take it. And I absorbed it immediately as if it was something that I had always known. And then so right after that time, so 2 months after like the night of the awakening, I suppose, I was in another acting class and I had to do a skit from the show Proof with Gwyneth Paltrow and Jake Gyllenhaal. And the character was like very angry and pissed off at her sister. And that's something that before I would always even say to people like, oh, I don't have an angry spectrum. It's weird. I get sad, I get anxious, but for some reason I'm just missing that. That's so strange.
Mm.
But so with the uprising of that snake-like energy, it brought up everything that had been just shoved down and sort of like stuffed down inside. And when I played this character, I had to be like, and like go off. And it really came out, and the whole room, like I'll never forget, it was like I just became a fully realized person in front of an audience. And I had a single tear and a quivering lip. And then I told my professor about it the week after, and I said, I had this crazy experience, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, you activated the warrior, because that's the symbol of the warrior, is the quivering readiness of the bottom lip. I thought, oh, and I was like maniacally laughing on my way home. Like I had completely snapped because my warrior had been just totally tossed aside. I had been giving my power away to other people my entire life. So with different spiritual awakenings, the shadows and the things that we don't use are essentially bound to make themselves known.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's like your true self started showing up, isn't it?
Yeah, but in a way that was like very surprising and abrupt. So that after that had happened with that anger and that warrior, I told my partner I loved him. I quit my job with no plan. Like I was completely unhinged and in pure chaos because I wasn't ready to stabilize that kind of power yet.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. Very interesting. But, is the other thing that you also mentioned was about the archetypes that you were just drawn to and you just connected, you're so connected with it and you resonated with it. But can you tell our listeners what archetypes are? And I know that you're doing some work currently with that. Can we explore that part of that? And I have personally never heard of what archetypes are, so I'm curious myself. So if you can shed some light on what that is and what your current work entails and how you incorporate archetypes into your current work as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So archetypes are universal symbols in the collective conscious and unconscious. So for example, the hero, the mother, the calm before the storm. So they transcend all time and all cultures. Everybody can kind of imagine like what the mother is and what that means. Okay, that means nurturing energy, caring for something, creating something, right? So there's an infinite number of archetypes, but the 10 that we use with archetypes at work are based on the planets. And so all of them have keywords, essentially, similar to the tarot. Tarot cards are also made of archetypes and based on the planets. And so those keywords can kind of focus and narrow different energy that we can work with. And it's funny, my roommate said the other day, like, people overuse the word energy and I don't like it. So what I mean by energy is essentially when your thoughts, feelings, and actions align and are creating a frequency or electromagnetic waves that can be felt, seen, and heard by others. So the work that we do with the archetypes is like through affirmations and embodiment. So you learn so much faster and it's so much more true when you're up and saying something. So for example, the warrior, which is based on Mars, the planet Mars, is typically conditioned and we see as masculine because it's the most embodied and it's forthright, right? It emits energy. And so if you want to activate your warrior, you can even do something like ready, aim, fire. And that'll get you in the zone or the state of the warrior. And that creates a container of behavior. So another example would be like, say John has a business meeting where he has to pitch a really important idea. He's not going to go into the bathroom mirror and go and draw a little cloud and be like, la, 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 because that wouldn't correspond with what he wants to accomplish. He would do like stand with hands on his hips in the mirror and focus and say, oh, I'm strong. I can do this. I've got this. Right. So they all fall into different containers of energy that we can use. And essentially, everyone has a top 3 and a bottom 2. And it's almost always the case that whatever challenge you have in your life, it's the bottom 2 that need to rise up and help you accomplish what you've set out to do, so that the top 3 aren't essentially possessing you and running the show and running your life.
Right. Oh, that's very interesting. So do you have people who come to you in order to kind of discover or learn what their archetypes are? And I would imagine that you kind of work with them so they can discover what the bottom 2 are in order to kind of rise up in their professional journey or in their personal growth. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have a quiz that has 100 questions, but then we also have a self-assessment, and that's usually the type that I'll do in a workshop setting. So we'll go through all 10, which I can describe for you if you'd like. And then it's really interesting to see how people, they either can really pick out their weaknesses very quickly and struggle more with their strengths, or they laugh, right? They always laugh when something's very true. And then we'll kind of go around and shop the different energies that are needed for the specific challenge, so that you kind of have a toolkit forever. Like once you see and learn, you can't unsee. They're always there.
Wow. Okay.
It also helps for teams too, like because, so say there's a team and they want to integrate new technology, like pretty much everyone does right now. But if there's no one on the team that has easy access to their renegade archetype, so the renegade is all about cutting edge, like it's a symbol of a lightning bolt, the next newest thing, going against the grain, non-conformity. If they don't have anyone who has easy access to that, then it's going to be harder for them to integrate new technology. Right. The basis is that we all have all 10, just different levels. So same ingredients, but different dials of flavor.
Okay, that's very interesting. I never thought you could apply it to a team setting. Wow, intrigued.
Really, and a collective. You can apply it to the entire collective in couples as well, and on an individual level.
Okay. Oh, quite fascinating. Yeah, I've never heard of this before. Wow. Okay. So I would imagine that you also work with couples and with professionals and individuals to kind of help them kind of, leverage what the archetypes are and how they can, kind of apply that into their real life. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So even in my own relationship, it's helped a great deal because with archetypes, when you use them, you're getting very personal and very deep, but also leaving space to be still impersonal. Right. So for example, There was one time my partner and I were in Niagara Falls, and I was so tired of like shopping around because I don't really like shopping too much, but he does. And everything had kind of been like, jumping to and fro, and I like the deeper things. So we got off the bus and there was a graveyard, and I
Hmm.
just started drifting towards the graveyard because I wanted to go sing at it. And he like didn't see me, so then he got mad and was like, "Hey, you can't just walk away like that." And but he said, "You can't just have your renegade step in and take you away, your renegade's being too much, like without telling me what's going on." And I
Hmm.
said, "Well, your warrior is being too forceful right now." You know what I mean? So instead of having to point blame at someone for saying, like, and being like, "Oh, you're stupid," or "You're not doing this enough," right? Like, you can depersonalize it
Hmm.
by isolating somebody's part. And then they can actually access that and think, "Oh, okay, my warrior could dial it down a little bit,"
Hmm.
right?
Wow, that's
Yeah.
very interesting. Oh, I'm kind of fascinated myself. It's quite interesting. Awesome. And the other thing I was curious about is, in the little bio I was reading of yours, you also are part of In for Win. What that's about? Tell us a little bit on that.
Yeah. So the link between archetypes and yin, as in yin and yang, is that they're all deal with complexity and the right brain. And that's the time that we're in. So just like the Kundalini rising, that feminine, formless energy rising on like a personal level is what I experience, but it's also happening on a collective level.
Mm,
So the feminine energies and parts of ourself, as well as the darkness, the shadow, unfettered or undealt with emotions, are rising in the collective. And it's something that we all sort of have to deal with
mm,
as we shift from, like, we're kind of decrescendoing from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. Pisces says, "I believe," and has been in this hierarchical structure of
mm,
like looking up and needing to be told what to do so that we can all function in this really rigid society.
mm,
But then the feminine, it's like, in the age of Aquarius, we'll be needing to find our own power. So digging deep and bringing it up for ourselves, we can make our own decisions. But with the too much yin, there could be chaos. So
mm,
yang is still just as important as yin. It's just that they're switching roles.
mm,
So for the last however long, a really long time, especially in the Industrial Revolution, it's like yang was the leader because it's like, okay, we need to build roads. We need to make machines, we need to make jobs, we need this. Very destination focused. And now they're switching the driver and passenger seat so that, like, yin was in the passenger before saying, "Hey, can we pull over? Can we talk about our feelings? Can we like," and yang was like, "No, we got to go." But now they've switched and yin is driving. But if yang isn't still there supporting, then she'll probably like flip into a ditch or like get extremely lost on a detour or something, right? So we still need yang. It's just that it's switching into a supportive role so that we can actually own our own duality,
mm.
per se. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. But if I think if you want to throw a little more light on it, I mean, it makes sense because you need to have the balance and you cannot do with the other. So it's always the case. And I think that even our listeners and audiences, they know about this. There's always a balance. It's good or bad. But nature always restores balance in some way or the other. So yeah, totally it does make sense. And with in for the win, so what does it comprise of? What exactly happens, or what exactly do you do? Is it linked to your is this where you do the archetypes work? Is that right? Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
this is all right. So
So
you are
yeah,
the founder of
yeah,
In for Win, where you're leading people and getting them to explore the archetypes and helping them out professionally on a professional scale or personal scale. So okay, right.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, with the archetypes, they're all on their own spectrum of too much or too little, as well as an equilibrium zone. So, like, in our culture, people are very quick to hate on power or men when really there is an equilibrium zone of like good power and
Mm,
good men, of course, but there's been sometimes too much of some things and too little of other things. And that's where we're getting to, is not these all or nothing conversations, but we need more complexity, sort of like like fixing a car is complicated, but something like COVID is highly complex. Like there's a lot of moving factors. So the more that we get to know our inner parts, we can better be calibrated for handling complexity on a larger scale. And
Mm,
so yin is all about it starting with you,
mm,
starting within.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I kind of link the two of those and use the like different spectrum exercises so you can feel the extremes of when you're maybe too much renegade or too little renegade, or too much yang, too little yang. And yin is not only the feminine, but the integration of both feminine and masculine. It's always including, which I did in like a dance exercise a few weeks ago, actually. It was just so interesting to see that the feminine wanted to form. It's like, because yin is like the 90% unconscious, whereas yang is like that little ego piece that's 10%. So they really move and work together. And I think it's going to be beautiful once we all sort of get on the same page with that,
Yeah.
however it looks, like however you are in your journey of what's too much and little for
Mm,
you, like
mm.
only you can figure it out.
Wow, that's amazing. It's a different perspective, really. So, in terms of, how one can access this, and because I have never come across archetypes myself, or maybe have never explored it, but how can one kind of access this? Can this be done, seeing a person who specializes or knows all about archetypes like yourself, meeting them face to face, or can that be done online? How can one access this? And also, other question I had is, when do you think one should actually consider exploring this path as well?
Hmm. Yeah, so I would say even on your own, you could look up any archetype or deity. For example, Artemis. So Artemis is a Greek goddess who's associated with the moon.
Mm,
She's seen as a feminine symbol, but she's also an archer and a hunter, which is kind of more seen as masculine activities, right? So again, they all have a yin yang and a spectrum within them. And if that was something that you were drawn to,
mm,
because, say you had kids or a family to protect, or you were really interested in nature, then you could embody Artemis and you could make up your own affirmations and even do like a method acting style to pretend that you are her and see what comes out in you. Because
mm,
again, they all exist within us. We all have archetypal ingredients. So that would be one way that you can access them, is just like search around and see who you're interested in. Maybe it's an Egyptian deity, or maybe it's a planet, maybe it's a plant, maybe it's a sound or a smell. It's all there for you
mm,
to use as a tool. And then, yeah, similarly, the coaching that I do is online. I will be doing an online group immersion because I just love the wisdom pool that comes together to see, how one person's strategist is different from another person's strategist and how we can all share that.
mm,
I find if you're in a place where you've got a really like tough challenge or you're feeling stuck, and maybe you've tried all of the other type of methodologies, but you're really interested in something different, or you've got like a keen sense that everything's connected and you want to learn how, then it could be right for you.
mm. Okay.
Mhm.
And, Jesse, you mentioned one can explore on their own and see what they connect with. Can they go wrong? Is there a way that they can go wrong?
Hmm. I mean, yeah, so I would say proceed with caution because it is pretty powerful stuff. Like how I told you about my warrior activation,
Yeah.
it kind of blew up my whole life. So,
Mm,
like, I would recommend maybe starting with a coach if you're going to actually, like, pick a big one and do it all in. But you can do like little tests for yourself and just saying affirmations as long as you're conscious and grounded. If you're grounded, then yeah, definitely go for anything. But I remember there was another time where for Halloween I dressed up as Lilith. So that's, the epitome of the dark feminine. And then I ended up like channeling her completely accidentally. And I started like texting people and putting a black heart at the end in a totally different voice. So, I was letting her move through me. And then I thought, okay, I better put my phone away so I don't say anything I regret as Lilith. But
yeah. Oh,
yeah,
wow. That's so
I would,
interesting.
yeah, you can proceed with caution, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I definitely would recommend that.
Mhm.
I think that's been kind of great exploring, today's conversation was really like, oof, it just has blown my mind kind of a thing. So
I know it can
thank
be
you
a
so
lot
much for that.
sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, I think this is great. And your journey has been incredible, and where it has taken you, from there to here, where you're helping people kind of discover their true self is healing in its own way, and that's amazing. And, for listeners for today, I would encourage them to go look into it and see what it is all about. And if they have any questions, they can, always reach out to Jessie. She's been really kind and wonderful, sharing her journey and her experience today with us. But unfortunately, this is all the time we had left today with Jessie, so we have to wrap it up. And Jessie, as you know, I bring along all the women on this podcast who have been through some sort of healing journey themselves, or helping people go through healing themselves. And I think all the work that you're doing is such a blessing, and helping people discover their true self is again is a blessing and is a healing in itself, as I mentioned. So thank you so much for your time and joining me today on Sipping on Stories. We'll do a little cheers with your kombucha drink, and I've got a little coffee here. So thank you so much for your time today. But before we wrap it up, do you have any final words for people out there or listeners out there to even have maybe intrigued or curious about what they are? Any final words you want to leave them with?
Mm. Yeah, I guess my final thing would be notice what you notice. And just remember that nobody's promised a smooth ride, but we are promised support through the obstacles, and you've got it within you. Yin for the win.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.